Man, I really gotta clean off my keyboard. Hear us on the stream?
Let me do this. Okay. Will you guys say something real quick?
Oh, yep. I just heard the replay.
I heard
think we have the audio.
Okay.
Yes, okay.
Gonna turn you guys down a little bit. You're peaking. Okay, we're good.
Yeah. As I do.
Awesome.
Yay, we did it. We did the thing.
Okay, I'm gonna send that link around to a couple places, but Bradley, why don't you lead us off here?
Oh, okay. Well, so welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us. Today has been kind of a wild day. Obviously, the launch of any new Kickstarter is insane behind the scenes. Today was absolutely no exception. Actually, today's behind the scenes were probably more chaotic than they ever have been. That's why we ended up launching 2 hours late. Now, typically I'm late. I say we're going to launch at noon and then we launch at 12:30, sometimes 1. I think I've gone to 1:15, but never 2:15 before, so that was not ideal. But hey, you know what? That's just the way it goes in this wild world of launching Kickstarters. So this was not my idea tonight. This was all Fern and Jake. I'm just like riding on their coattails here. I mostly was going to be here for moral support and maybe throw in a couple tidbits of information about behind the scenes stuff as it relates to this launch, as well as maybe some never before heard stories about the original Kickstarter. But so today the launch has gone extremely well. It is one of the fastest. I think it's like the second fastest we've ever funded.
From the email I got, I think it was like 36 minutes.
Yes, it should have been 36 minutes, and I think we may have had one that funded in 30 minutes, but certainly this was right there, second place. This was a little unexpected. Obviously, Wild Hunt Festival did really well for us the first time. It still remains as Lion Wing's most successful Kickstarter, which is cool. So definitely expected people to show up, just not quite as quickly as they did. So it's been really awesome. Thank you everyone for believing in the project and liking the game enough the first time to return. And for those who haven't played it, you liked enough of what you saw to where you wanted to trust your money with us. So much appreciated. Yeah, very successful. This is also the first Kickstarter we've launched without stretch goals, so I was a little worried about how that might go down, but that's turned out to be okay. Definitely feels weird though. I'm so used to like rushing around and like creating stretch goals in real time. I'm like, now I've got all this time on my hands. Like, what do I do? I don't know what to do right now.
You work on the next thing while we handle the rest.
Yeah, now I'm working on Where's Blade today. So okay, but yeah, so that's where we're at. Really, really awesome first 7 hours? Yeah, 7 hours.
Yeah.
And I love the mention on stretch goals because one of the things that like we kind of decided as a group was not to offer stretch goals, and that's because everything that we thought we wanted as a stretch goal is something we wanted to put into the game, so we put into the base game. So every stretch goal that you would have seen on our Kickstarter is essentially already in there and helping out the quality of the game.
Yeah, it's weird having to explain that to people. Because we did kick around the idea of including stretch goals, and then I think we just settled like, to me the approach was a lot more consumer friendly to just say like, all right, we're just dropping it all in there. We're not going to play games and act like we're like going to include all these stretch goals we weren't already going to include. We're just like, here it is. Here's the best possible product that we've got for you, and that's what you're backing. That's what your money's getting. I think it was the right call, frankly.
Absolutely. And I think that, and the funny thing is, if you recall our like little stretch goal list, I think Aria of Light and Shadow originally started as maybe we'll be able to put these into the base box, and now they've become their own little thing and their own little like line of Wild Hunt Festival products that's just going to continue on.
No, actually, I totally forgot about that. Yeah, like, I don't think the idea
we were going to split them up,
yeah,
character, and the story mode, which would have been crazy.
Well, and at the time, I don't even think we had come up with the whole like mini expansion, kind of something that tied people over in between like big expansions. And then when we decided, wait a second, let's just like drop those into the Kickstarter and them not be stretch goals. I think that's when the mini expansion idea came about. And then from there, our roadmap really changed of like what the next 2 years are going to look like.
Yeah, and effectively built itself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Got a lot of fun things planned for you. Including
Yeah.
auxiliary content that doesn't even have to do with Kickstarters or selling you things. Some of the stuff is just we're going to start writing stories and showing you them to build out the world of Gradia. Or things like, I think we're doing monthly challenges at some point where we're just going to say, hey, fight this boss under this circumstance and have fun.
Yeah, I actually, funny story about that. So we've been tossing around ideas on stuff to kind of do, and it's funny that we're diving right into this now, but I'm tangenting anyway. When we started talking about the ideas of like side stories and like little stuff like blister packs to release in between content, one of the things I think that we want to do, hopefully, is to maybe add like more achievements, right? The original game has like 8 achievements, 1 for every challenge boss. It's pretty good. But I recently picked up a board game and realized they have a QR code on the back of the rulebook that just says, scan this for achievements. And it's like, oh, we could just utilize the website and just like start slapdashing achievements down the line, as a way to, make some of that active content, and make the website a place to be for Wild Hunt Festival stuff in general.
Yeah, the monthly challenges are something that I think we're still trying to fully flesh out. Today, I was just trying to round out the Wild Hunt Festival website, which if anyone's watching this and you haven't checked out wildhuntfestival.com, jump over there real quick. Cool website that we put together. But right before we launched, there were still 2 pages that were sort of under construction, and one of them was the monthly challenges page. And so I just had to kind of write something, and certainly we had talked about what those monthly challenges might look like. But I like the idea of, giving the community a way to interact with the game that they normally wouldn't, which kind of plays into that whole achievement thing anyway. So this isn't like a logic leap for Wild Hunt Festival to have this, because like we already had achievements in the base game, and that's essentially what the monthly challenges are. But I thought it would be cool to have some kind of like ranking little leaderboard, something to that effect, just to give people a little extra incentive to jump into the monthly challenge. And then I toyed around with the idea of like, well, what if we gave away little prizes, or like someone got their name into the next rule book as like one of the monthly winners. So I think there's a lot of cool things that we could do with the monthly challenges that I think we'll probably have fleshed out toward the end of the year. Better fleshed out.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh yeah, at worst there will be bragging rights for being the first person to complete the challenge.
And while Fern and I may not be able to win them, we will absolutely be competing. Okay, yeah. So anyway, tangent aside, where do we want to go first? Welcome to Beyond the Hunt, episode 4, technically. It's launch day for Wild Hunt Festival Chronicles. Can you believe it? It has been a long time coming. Where should we go first?
It really.
Do we want to answer? Yeah, do we want to grab those couple questions and then we can jump into some historical? All right. Fern, what is our first question?
All right. First question is from the Discord, and it is, why the shade towards Charlona?
Okay. I'll go first because I feel like I'm the defendant here. I am personally in favor of Charlona because I like her gameplay style. I know that, so you'll see in the long play that unfortunately a little bit of her strategy just kind of boils down to punch for a mana, spend the mana, punch for a mana, spend the mana, which is okay, but I think where she shines in the fact that she has that elemental sword extra card, which kind of brings forth this extra like thought process of I have to charge up these elements, and then when I have them I can spend them, or I can hold them for a skill that kind of is like a super ultimate when it triggers. So that enough to say you all know me. I'm more of a mechanical kind of person. I love when a character looks really cool, but I certainly don't mind if they look like whatever. But they're really fun to play. You know, I think that's where I sit with it. It's a great idea. It loses a little bit in execution. I think Fern and I would probably agree on that. But that's beside the point. It is a Ramo character. No shade, obviously. We love Ramo very
No,
much.
we love Ramo.
My issue with Charlone is not her mechanically. I think mechanically she's fine. Perfectly good character. Mine is more like aesthetically oriented. So I think by and large, Wadhun Festival has like incredible art, very unique. It's got its own style. At this point, I think you can look at Wild Hunt Festival, and so long as you're familiar with the series or the game, you look at the art and you're like, oh yeah, that's a Wild Hunt Festival game. Like, it's got a nice sense of identity to it, which I love. All the characters look fantastic. And Charlona looks fantastic until you get to like here. And then from like here on up, I'm just like, no.
Oh no.
No, I can't. I have a. I just don't like the way she looks, guys. That's what I'm trying to say here. Yeah. She looks like something just happened, but she doesn't want to tell you about it, and I got an issue with that.
Well, that'll have to be Galateo's problem.
I think she's supposed to be sort of royal. I don't know.
One more time, friend.
I think she's supposed to be some sort of royal. I'm not sure.
That's the vibe she
know if
gives
there's
off.
any
She's.
real lore entry to her yet.
I don't know. We're gonna have to ask Ramo for that one, I think.
That's wrong.
But anyway, so yeah, that's the internal discourse with Charlona. Nothing really monumental, just some silly banter. All right, do we have another question? I don't.
Yeah.
think
So what about that question from Retroflow?
Oh, yeah. All right. So now that we're live, everybody, it is another launch for Lion Wing. Very successful so far. We're all very excited. But of course, you know we have to ask the question, Bradley, where are the linen finish? Is that?
I mean, the linen finishes were I want to say that they were left behind with the last release. I hate linen finishes, just to catch anyone up to speed. This has been an inside joke with the Lion Wing community for like 6 years now. Okay, maybe not 6 years, but since 2020. So 5 years, close enough. And like I absolutely I want to throw up when I touch linen finish cards. And so it became like this running joke, because every time we'd have a Kickstarter campaign, I would like begrudgingly, I have to come up with some kind of stretch goal, and I'm like thinking about them in real time, and I'm like, fuck it, we'll just do like linen finish on the cards, whatever. Like that'll give something to look forward to. But like I hated doing it. Every time I did it, I did it kicking and screaming. And so now there's someone in the community, Retroflow, who likes to just poke me with bringing up linen finish on everything. I think he was maybe even listed in one of the backer credits. As
I can go pull out Picaresque. It's in there.
What was the name that he chose?
Sleeves linen finish, because you also are a adamant disliker of sleeves, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I hate card sleeves. They're stupid. And so yeah, so like there's not much in this life that I hate more than linen finish cards and card sleeves, other than maybe pickles. But so will a linen finish be in Chronicles? I think when the three of us last met, much to my chagrin, I think we kind of determined that like linen finish makes sense for Wild Hunt Festival. As much as it pains me to say, like that feels right for the game and like its naturistic properties and the theming around it. So like I'm willing to like die a little bit inside to have linen finish on the cards if it makes thematic sense and most people like it. So
I do think so. We of course battered you about this during the first Beyond the Hunt, but I do think that from the original game, you know, the cards really feel like they're adventurer like report cards or like they're adventurer IDs. So putting linen finish on the cards is kind of like synonymous with Wild Hunt Festival itself.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's true.
Yeah, excellent. So thank you for filling in the community once again for that. We'll see you again when Where's Blade starts. But beside the point, yeah, I guess if you want to talk about some of the historical stuff from the original campaign, or, you know, because there was a lot of fun facts from your list in our DMs that I missed, if you want to drop any of those, please, you know, be my guest, take the floor.
Yeah, so if you've been following and you're probably not, because we need to build the social media following, which is something we got to work on. But if you are like the 3 people that are following Wild Hunt Fest at Wild Hunt Fest on X, then you saw some of this. But Jake came to me, I don't know, last week or something, was like, hey, I want to do a countdown to the lead up to launch. It'd be really cool if you had some kind of like behind the scenes facts that you could share with people. And I did. So I put together a big old list of like things that I've never told anyone or that no one really ever knew. And he started doling out some of those on social media, which was fun. So I'll go through some of those right now, because I think people who are watching this or will watch this, who are backers of the original game, will find this stuff interesting. I don't know if you guys talked about this on X, but I almost delayed the Wild Hunt Festival Kickstarter by a year. I was afraid. We had just done a co-publishing deal with Japanime when we put Testament on Kickstarter in February of 2020, and then we launched Wild Hunt Festival, the original game, 4 months later, June 23rd, 2020. And I was worried, because both of those games are boss battlers. They both get to the destination of being a boss battler through very different paths. But the destination is ultimately the same. It's a boss battler. And so I was afraid that there was going to be like audience fatigue, especially because we didn't really have a built-in audience at that time. And so I was going to be trying to pull a lot of people from the Japanime audience to Wild Hunt Festival, and I was like, I don't even know if people are going to want another one of these games. First off, we haven't delivered Testament yet. The campaign was just 4 months ago, and now I'm now coming back with another game that's kind of similar, even though it looks very different and it handles itself very different. I was just afraid that people were not going to want that kind of thing again. And so I was like, you know what? I'm moving it. I'm not going to launch in the summer like I originally planned to. So I moved things around. Another Kickstarter was going to go in its place, and that Kickstarter never came to fruition, and I moved Wild Hunt Festival back to the June spot, and then we launched in June, because I kind of just eventually said like, fuck it, like I just got to do this, whatever. Like the other project isn't ready anymore. I've got nothing else planned, and like I don't want to just sit here like twiddling my thumbs for the next 6 months while I don't release anything. So I was like, all right, come what may. If it's a success, awesome. I kind of feel like it's not going to be, whatever. Let's just do it. And then it was a success. So, so the really interesting part is like the project that was supposed to go in its place, just not only did it not come out then, it just never came out at all.
Really?
So I'm in my Kickstarter account. I'm in the Lionwood Kickstarter account. I have the entire Kickstarter page for this game built out. Everything. Graphics, videos that people shot that did previews for the game, like the whole thing.
Way.
Yeah. So one day I'll talk about what that game was. It was a cool game. But nevertheless, I think it was the right decision, obviously, to launch the original game when we did, because hey, you know, worked out pretty all right. So that's a fun little fact. I oftentimes wonder what would have happened to the game had we launched a year later. Like, would the market have been interested? Would it have been, I don't know. I like catching people right at the beginning of COVID. I actually think really helped the game. And I'm not sure if it would have had the same impact if we launched a year later. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I was a late pledger to the project, but I would definitely say that during the time that we were waiting, like for manufacturing and delivery and stuff, the community did really pop off. Yeah, right. Like we built a lot of relationships during that time, and I think you know, a lot of us are really close for that.
I think the genesis of the Lion Wing community, honestly, was like predicated on Wild Hunt Festival. Everything that came after,
Sure.
kind of rode off the back of Wild Hunt Festival and the community that came to the Discord specifically because of that game. So like it worked out for sure in multiple ways. It's definitely like in some ways, would Lion Wing be where it's at right now without it? I don't know. It's an interesting thing to think about. Well, what's really fascinating is we launched Testament in February, and I didn't think there was much of a market for a boss battler at the time, and I definitely didn't think there was again in June, because like in 2020 the board game industry was like still really like infatuated with worker placement games. This is fascinating.
Yeah.
Like fascinating to me because I think worker placement games are like awful, and I'm always just like flummoxed by people like being so enamored with them. I'm like, this, who's having fun? Who's having fun playing
Never see
any of these games?
Never see you at a Euro table ever.
No, it's gross, right? So but like the market was really into it. So I'm like, no one's gonna want to play this like really like trashy boss battler with anime graphics because everyone's like just playing like the latest Euro worker placement. And then I guess some people were like, actually, we want that trashy anime game too.
And that's really funny though, because I feel like, as sure, the board game market has definitely gotten saturated a little bit over the years with, all the board games coming out. You've still got titans like, that fit into this boss battler space. Would you count Marvel United? Would you count, oh geez, when my idea right over my head, gone.
I always think about,
I don't know,
I always think about Aeon's End.
like,
That's like
Aeon's End is
boss battler.
And I love that game, but good lord, I will never own all of it. Or any of it, unfortunately. Because if I do, I'm going to want it all.
Yeah.
But, I love boss battlers, and I think they're great. And me just being a co-op oriented person, where you're team building and working with other people on strategies and stuff like that is just kind of like my wheelhouse. So I'm always on the hunt for something like that. And of course, always on the hunt for new ideas for Wild Hunt Festival.
Yeah. Well, and I think,
anyway, fishing minigame one.
Yeah, boss. Yeah, right. I think boss battlers are interesting to me because like sometimes I'm like, do I even like board games? But but when I play like a boss battler or some kind of trashy game, I'm like, yeah, I like this because it doesn't feel super board gamey. And I think that's what has always drawn me to Wild Hunt Festival specifically, even more so than Testament, even though Testament was kind of like my dream project. Testament was the reason that I started Lion Wing, and then I just happened to somehow get that license. I've come to actually like Wild Hunt Festival way more just because it does feel like that perfect adaptation of the JRPG formula where I play it and I'm like, oh, cool, I'm not playing a board game. And I like that because I think that also brings in a crowd who maybe have similar views or like see board games as being like, not my thing, or it's boring or complicated, or they're like super drawn out. And I think Wild Hunt Festival can sort of scratch that itch of like, I want to engage with analog components, but not really. So Wild Hunt Festival, I think, speaks to those people because it's very fast. And I think its mechanics just make a lot of sense. Like when you look at the rule book, you're like, this thing's like 4 pages. Most of the time I don't even play board games because I pick up the rule book. I'm like, I'm not reading this. I'm not reading 27 pages of a rule book. That's ridiculous.
A quote I heard recently was, do we buy board games or TTRPGs or whatever to buy the time to read the books? Right? That is like a super weird and like niche comment, but like when you think about it, it's true. Like, who's going to read the rule book if you own the game? You're going to read the rule book. So, the nice thing about Wild Hunt is how fast it'll, you can get it onto the table and you read that rule book once and you get it all. I mean, Fern and I could teach you in a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm. It also doesn't overstay its welcome on the table, which is awesome. Sorry, Fern, go ahead.
No, yeah, it's like both of those issues are really important, right? It's really easy to teach. I know I'm usually the rulebook person whenever anyone buys a game. It's like, I bought this game, read the book for me and tell me how it works. Wild Hunt Festival, I don't have to look at the book at all to explain because it's just like, hey, you have actions and you pick one, and that's how you do it and sit. And most of the game is figure out what you're gonna do and why, as opposed to how. Uh, yeah, and the second part about overstaying is welcome. I think story mode is questionable because that can take up to 6 hours, but you will definitely pick that mode as opposed to challenge mode, which is like 20 to 50 minutes, and then you're done.
Yeah, I love having the having that variety too, because so first I guess I don't think of story mode as like this super long tailed thing, even though it absolutely is. To go through the whole thing, obviously you're sitting down at the table for probably 4 hours. But you can also play. You don't have to do that with this game. You don't have to like play through the entire story mode in one sitting, um, which
Yeah.
I like. But also, if you're like you just really want to get in and out real quick, I love that challenge mode exists for that 25-minute encounter, which is perfect for my life in most cases. Because yeah, it's like I don't have a ton of time to sit down, so yeah, I'll just bust through challenge mode real quick.
Yeah. The funny that time, if time was ever an issue, especially for like my friends when we were still in college, which is strange to say. When were we playing? We weren't playing Claudia, I guess after. Anyway, so when my friends from college and I would play the game like in person and we had to save for whatever reason, I'd just snap a picture of the game state on my phone and then we'd go back to it the next day.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
The like
Super
And
lightweight to the table.
mm-hmm,
yeah.
definitely. Like I love not getting encumbered by components. So like if I can get over the whole like obstacle in my head of like, oh god, I gotta read this like super long rule book. If I can get over that, I then like have the next challenge in front of me, which is, oh god, look how many components there are. Which is cool when you're getting ready to set up because like you're hyped, you're excited. But it's kind of like coming home from vacation when you're like, oh god, this drive home really, or this flight home really sucks and feels really long because I got nothing to look forward to. I'm going back to this depressing way of living. And that's how I feel about like, yeah, like board game component cleanup. I'm like, oh my god, and I got to clean up all this stuff. I don't want to do that. That sounds like mega boring. So I like that Wild Hunt Festival is very lightweight in that regard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess shout out to the long play. Originally what was like an hour and 50-minute recording, I was able to trim a lot of like Fern and I discussing strategy and like me moving components around down to like a 52-minute, like, which is obviously long, but a lot of people watch their content in 2x nowadays. That's a pretty quick, like, digestible Wild Hunt Festival playthrough, and it's 2 bosses. So, I guess add a couple of minutes for like reading the game book when that is, in your hands and stuff like that. So, better part of a little over an hour, but still pretty breezy, like all things considered.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I recently played through or started playing the story mode of Vanilla Wild Hunt Festival, Claudia Wild Hunt Festival. Um, and I got through the first story mode boss in like 25 minutes, 30 minutes maybe. Maybe it's 35 minutes actually now that I think about it. But like what a great introduction to the game because I think most people are probably going to play story mode when they open up Anniversary Edition as opposed to challenge mode. I don't know. To me, challenge mode seems like something like, oh, I'm going to do after I beat the story, but I don't know. Maybe people play differently than I do. Nevertheless, it's really great that the first introduction to the game like also doesn't overstay its welcome. Makes a very good
Yeah.
first impression.
That's actually really interesting. Because a seasoned player like any of us at this point could rush through the first boss of story mode in maybe 10-15 minutes.
Totally.
Because we kind of already know what it is. It's low threat. Like we're all just going through it, and maybe we lose a couple of optimization points from like our HP or whatever throughout the process. But for a new player, and this is speaking from my experience because I also started with story mode, each boss in a story chain takes around the same amount of time while you're learning how to play the game, right? The first boss can take around 30 minutes when you're playing through. The second boss also is a little harder, so there's a little more that work into. And the fourth boss is almost a challenge boss. And at that point, you should know how the game works, and then you're going through that in about the same amount of time. Whereas like now I say, oh, the first boss takes 10 minutes and then just scales up to 30 on the fourth one. Uh, for new players, it's very good introduction to, hey, I'm going to spend 30-minute segments on each of these bosses learning how to play while also playing the game.
That's a really good point. I don't think I ever conceptualized the play experience for story mode and Karate Iwanan Festival in that way. But you're totally right. Now, I haven't played all the way through story mode in a long time, but my memory says you are totally spot on with that, and I hadn't thought about it in that way. When was the last time you guys played Nightmare Mode?
Excellent question.
Uh,
Probably. Hold on, I might have the screenshot actually. But
it was
last
it was a test, wasn't it?
Okay, yeah. If you count us play testing content that's coming in the future, that's the last time I played Nightmare Mode. However, official content, last time I played Nightmare Mode was beating the Red Dragon of Eternal Flame. A buddy of mine and I figured out that if you put Suika and Erase on the same character slot, Erase has the most health in the game, so you put a character with insane health with Suika's Tonko type, and it just max damage over and over and over and over again.
Interesting. That's funny.
I actually really like that mode for the way that you can combine characters like that.
Yeah, I think Nightmare Mode's really cool, and that is one of the things that Jake and I have been thinking about is, hey, maybe we need more Nightmare Mode, and so that playtest we did was a really interesting take on Nightmare Mode, and maybe you'll see it in the future.
I think what's interesting about Nightmare Mode is so it didn't exist before the first Kickstarter campaign. And if I'm remembering correctly, it didn't exist until we were frantically looking for a stretch goal. And had come kind of run out of options at the time. And Ramo was like, I'll just make like a super challenging version of the boss. And I was like, we've already got that. It's called challenge mode. And he was like, no, like actual challenge mode. And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about, but sure, whatever. So he made up like Nightmare Mode, and he had something for me in like 2 days. So he that whole mode came to him and was fleshed out, and the first boss done within 48 hours of us coming up with the idea.
Ramo cooked Nightmare Mode as an exclusive for the Western release?
Yes.
Yep.
I would have told you that was one of his expansions.
Nope. No, that was us desperately trying to come up with something.
Nope. It ended up becoming one of his expansions. He sold it later as a pack.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Ramo,
it's one of my favorite modes.
He's a machine, dude. Like, whether it's art or modes or characters, my guy is so quick.
Speaking of which, wait till you guys see some of that art that he's cooking up for Aria of Light and Shadow. Very excited to see those on the cards.
Yeah, those bosses are.
We'll be showing those off hopefully during the campaign sometime, maybe towards the end if they come in a little late, but they'll be there.
Yeah. And I think it's fair to say that...
we got another question.
Oh, yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. You want to read it?
From the Discord. So the Kickstarter says you're going to keep supporting this with smaller content packages between expansions. Do you already have some of this future content planned out, or do you have some kind of release game plan? Sorry, I'm reading this incorrectly. Every 6 months or 3 months, or are we still in the planning stages for that? So what's the schedule
Amazing
look like?
question.
What does the content look like? And then we had a follow-up, someone else saying good question. So I would agree, that is a great question.
So, with that being said, we will be releasing a roadmap, I don't know, Bradley, towards the end of the campaign or like somewhere in there.
Yeah.
We're going to get like an official like graphic made of what the plan is. But when Fern and I came to Bradley with a lot of this content that you're going to start seeing over the course of these releases, as of right now, we have content done up to, I would say, about a quarter of the Core 2 box. Maybe just a little smidge here and there missing, but for the most part, we are ready up until Core 2. the current roadmap from the last time we spoke about this was going to be starting, what is it, a couple months or something. Hold on. I'm going to get this right from the top of my head. When the content gets to you on the delivery date, we are planning on dropping promo stuff. After that, I believe it's 3 or 6 months in between. There'll be 1 or 2 drops, and then we'll do core 2 at like the 18-month mark or something like that. I believe was the what we have written down right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
all that's to say, we have a lot already ready. It's kind of just get art, edit it onto cards, and make it happen.
yeah, so it's really interesting. We've got 2 small packs that are kind of like Aria Light and Shadow size, the side stories, and then we've got a mid-season quote unquote booster that will be larger in size. That we'll throw in between those 2 updates, and all 3 of those things are mostly done on the design side. They aren't quite finished artistically, but hey, that's something we have time for.
Yeah. Yeah, I think when we last talked, we had content planned through the middle to quarter 3 of 2027.
Yeah.
And I think we also have figured out our release cadence as well. Because we did a lot of talking about like how do you keep players like interested in a board game? Like when do you release new content? How long does someone need to like go through and replay content of a board game before they are then ready for something new? And like we kind of did the math behind it, and I think we've come up with a roadmap that makes a lot of sense when taking that into consideration specifically, of just making sure we've always got something new for folks to experience and play. Now there's some nuance to this as well, because yes, obviously we're in the board game business, so our primary focus is on releasing gameplay content. Go figure, right? And we've got different sized releases planned at different intervals to make sure that we're keeping the audience interested. But we also want to make sure that we're releasing what I'm just calling shoulder content, which is non-essential content, but still things that you can engage with to sort of keep you in the world as long as you want of Cradia. So, I'll be talking about this, I think, in the next update, but just the sneak preview is we've got plans to build out this world through various means and media and mediums and platform delivery. So it's going to be sort of like a multi-pronged approach, and that's how we want to treat this property, so that even in between micro releases or the mini expansions like side stories, I just call them micro release, but we have even smaller things planned than mini expansions. Those will probably come through the form of like Patreon. But then in between that, even we'll be releasing like narrative stuff to detail and flesh out the characters that you're playing with, so that you have a greater sense of connective tissue with those characters that you have on the table in front of you. So we really just want to create an IP, essentially a brand, that you can experience in whatever way you want to that day. Maybe it's gameplay, and when you break that down, maybe it's just like a quick thing, so you're going to play like one of the mini expansions, or like you want to go full hog into a fully featured standalone expansion, or maybe you're like, I don't really want to play, but it'd be cool to read about some of these characters. Okay, well, you can jump online, you can do that. I think we've got some other things planned as well for shoulder content in that regard. And honestly, Beyond the Hunt is part of the shoulder content approach as well. So just trying to create something interesting, for people to come back to time and time again, because I really think that this world and the games have legs.
Yeah, they definitely do. I think one of the other like small bits of content that we kind of like haven't talked about very much, but I think would be cool to have done, because it's something that Ramo has mentioned a bit, is maybe doing like some alternate arts or something along those lines of some of the characters. I don't remember if we ever talked about how those would get released, be they either Patreon exclusive or other form of delivery. But I do think that we should make sure that we keep, the current characters maybe getting an alternate, job or imagery or like new card or something along those lines in the background of our minds.
Yeah, I think we talked about promos, alt art promos, which I love. If you've backed any of the other like Lion Wing board games, I think we've offered alt art promos in almost all of them. So like I'm personally a big fan of that. And when the three of us met a while ago and we were talking about this, I think there was like a general kind of interest. It's not a big deal, but it's just something little. It's like a small little thing that I think people would find cool, which is probably why we'd go through Patreon, because it would be small, or like a small purchase through the Lion Wing store or a free giveaway, whatever, at a convention. Just like different outfits for the characters, like your favorite character drawn in new garb. Like, okay, that has no real like gameplay effect, but like,
yeah, but
that's cool. You're looking
it'd
at
be
these
neat.
things for an hour to 4 hours at a time. I want some visual diversity with the characters that I like to play.
Absolutely, and look into other things like, I don't know, seasonal versions of that, right? Like the Endless Winter characters as like official alternate arts would be cool. We've got Summer Lemugia already. We've got the, summer variant of something, whatever. And I think that maybe be neat. I don't know. Some of these characters we could try some sort of foil printing on the card or something for accents, or I don't know, maybe throw out like a updated skill something for like a base game character. Maybe try to do like a, here's an alternate skill set for a character with one of the alt jobs. Might be neat. Who knows?
Yeah, I'm determined, and we kind of got to it with Endless Winter. But if people followed Line Wing for a while, like we've released a lot of like Christmas DLC for things, and Pick Rusk Roman is immediately coming to mind. So I would love to do a more like targeted Christmas thing for Wild Hunt Festival. We got close with Endless Winter, and that made a lot of sense. Obviously, that's more like in universe, in canon stuff. Like Endless Winter fits within the canon. I'd like to just do something sort of outside the canon for like a Christmas thing. Like how awesome would it be to have like Manad dressed up as Santa Claus? Like,
yeah, the little peddler bag is like a sack or something,
sack with
and
toys in it, right? Like I've got this whole thing in my head. Or just thinking of Urase dressed up as Santa Claus. With the beard,
that would be perfect.
Like I just want to do something real stupid like that.
The challenge boss is like a sleigh, and it's like doing like toy bombs or something,
Or the challenge boss is like an in-universe drawn Santa Claus, like a corrupted,
exactly
a corrupted
perfect
Santa Claus. Like that's my idea of a good time.
But yeah, so that's the kind of thing, that we'll start considering, as we move along here. But the baseline of what you're going to be seeing from this project for at least the next year and a half, 2 years, is effectively ready to go, which is great. So we hope you are as excited as we are to get some of that content into your hands.
Yeah, I was a little nervous about calling it
Okay.
an expandable board game, but like when we were talking earlier today, and I was like thinking about what I was gonna write in the update, the truth hit me of like, oh my god. First off, why didn't this come to me like 2 years ago when we started this project? But also, it's coming to me right now, like, oh, we're creating an expandable game. Oh, got it.
Yeah. And the initial reaction to that is probably, oh god, like a Fantasy Flight, like,
Right.
60 bajillion, right, like Marvel United, like, whoa. But no,
Yeah, not
like
that.
reasonable, and the things that we are going to be releasing are obviously always going to be packed with content. Like, we are never ever going to shortchange you on something like that. So I think you are more than safe to be calling Wild Hunt Festival something that is expandable.
Yeah. That's actually one of the interesting points is some of the reasons of why we were doing all the shoulder content is because of things like an Aria of Light and Shadow. We were saying, oh, it's a story mode, it's 4 bosses, 2 characters, and like a couple items and stuff. But we have so much more to talk about in terms of just that story alone that we didn't want to like charge you to write to like print out a book when we could just post it online and say go read it.
Mm.
It's really like not content that we wanted to sell to you in terms of Wild Hunt Festival because it's not Wild Hunt Festival game. It's extra stuff that is relevant to the game and relevant to the lore. But we were just like, yeah, it doesn't really feel like we want to throw a whole book at you.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really cool because that means the website is going to eventually become this treasure trove of just stuff, and it's going to be great.
What I like about Aria,
Yeah.
aside from the fact that it represents something we're trying to do with this game, which is the mini expansion, and I really like that because that's like a low cost, very affordable, consumer friendly thing to offer that still has like some really awesome content in it. Like, yeah, there's not a ton inside that mini expansion, but like there's enough there gameplay wise for lots of hours of fun. But what I really like about Aria, aside from what it stands for, is yes, Anniversary Edition and Donkai have a story to go along with all that. Endless Winter is super story heavy, but I'm kind of seeing Aria as like our first like narrative focused gameplay release, and I think what we're trying to do with building this thing out into something more than just like this one-off boss battler that you play in between like heavier games or whatever. It's more of a, yes, it is a boss battler, but it can be a lot more. And here, let us show you how it can be more. It can be a dungeon mode in Donkai. It can be nightmare mode in Anniversary Edition, or it can be this very story-centric, character-driven, series of bosses that tell a confined story from beginning to end. Like a 3-act structure with a resolution in the end, and like Wild Hunt Festival can also be that. It can be those other things, and it can be that too. And that's cool, because then you're talking about content diversity, and like that's the stuff that's fun to me and keeps us creatively stimulated, and also keeps people wanting to check out the next release because it might be different than the last.
Yeah, and that right there is what earns it the expandable title, right? Like, if that's like, obviously, for me, right, as someone who really just loves the gameplay aspect, I would absolutely still pick up Arya because those 2 characters and those 4 really unique bosses are something that I'm like, man, I want those for my roster. I want those 2 characters to be able to mess around with and build team comps around. Like, as a consumer, first, I would be like, oh yeah, like, story's cool, like, I'll read it at some point, but at this point, where I am now, it is a part of the content that, as a consumer, I wouldn't care too much about, but is now something that I look at and like, dang, like that's kind of an important part of this. Like the story and the atmosphere that we're creating with these is, really something special.
Well, and it's sort of like intrinsic to the gameplay experience too, because like, yeah, for people who just want to show up and play the game, which by the way, vast majority of people, which is why like gameplay content will always come first, will always be the main focus. But how you guys have designed Aria, because Aria was a completely Wild Hunt Studios designed product, overseen and supervised and obviously signed off on by Ramo and the original team at Liner Note. But this is all a Wild Hunt Studios production when it comes to Aria. It's been designed in a way that, yes, gameplay first, obviously, but the story and the character development is sort of like so intertwined with those gameplay elements, and even who the characters are as attacker type characters. How they play has been informed by the story behind them, and the story behind them has been informed by how they play. So So it really does create this cool kind of synergistic product where it's like, yeah, you can just show up and you play the game. You don't even have to read the story. But also, you're kind of missing something I think is really important to the gameplay experience by not reading the story.
Right.
Yep.
Totally agree.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting question you can ask yourself, which is, if you've played story mode, how can I be informed about the story of these characters if I don't read the book, just by fighting the boss? Because that is the main gameplay element, right? The little book in between on the quest log in the original game, a lot of people skip that. I know I did eventually after some point where I was just like, yeah, you know what, we're fighting 4 bosses. I don't really care about what the lineup is. Um, so you may ask, how do you tell story elements in that? And I think the way we address that in gameplay elements has something really interesting involved in it. Um, because the bosses themselves, like, you can absolutely fight them without the 2 characters in there. You can absolutely use the 2 characters in any other content without fighting those bosses and still have a great time, and still have a really interesting story mode to go through. But when you play them together, you'll start to see certain elements in just the boss fight, in just how they play and how the attacks of the bosses and the skill of the characters line up. And it's a really cool thing to happen. And then you also have this whole little booklet that'll come into it, just like the quest log and all this other stuff that we're throwing up on the website.
Yeah, I like the that sort of like subtle storytelling through just gameplay interaction. Not even like realizing that you are experiencing storytelling and world building because you're just playing the game, right? But yeah, how you see those characters interact and what their skills are, and even like what the names of the skills are, and then how that collides with the boss and who the boss is, and even the names of the boss's attacks. It all just kind of creates something that's multifaceted in a pretty cool way. I do think that for Arya, I shouldn't say this. Like, you don't need to, like, this. The story is so like ancillary to Anniversary Edition. Not more important in Donkai, but you're not like gonna miss anything if you play Anniversary Edition and just never read about the characters. You never read that quest log book. You're not gonna miss anything other than like cool little world building things. I do think you miss out on something by not reading the story and the characters in Arya. I think you miss out on a core gameplay experience.
Definitely agree. And I think it's worth mentioning, now that we've mentioned the original character booklet twice, that we are going to be going back, looking at that, and also, hopefully, writing new entries for the new characters. So if you liked that from the original game, be prepared for new character profiles, including mine and Fern's very custom rankings of what their strength, dexterity, magic, and whatever the other status is, that are totally legit and real in the original book.
Dude, I loved that part of the book. I was like so enamored with that. Like, it doesn't really matter, but I loved that there was some kind of rating system there.
There's no reason for it not to be, right? Like, for example, okay, so for those of you who have watched our other content on the game, Fern and I have made note of this before. There are like star ratings on the character boards, and for a little bit we were like, Ramo, why are we doing this? Like, this is kind of weird. But we still haven't like talked to him about that wholeheartedly. So we realized that one of the things the star system could be used for, instead of being like a traditional gotcha thing where it's like, oh wow, this character's rarer than the other, because that's not the case. What we can use it for is have the stars determine character complexity. And that might actually be a really cool thing maybe to add to the character book that could go along with our, rating of how strong Arase is or how dexterous Kune is and things like that. Just a little, extra on top.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm really glad that you finally called him Arase and stopped calling him Erase.
I'm sorry, I can't okay. I call him Erase, and this game is Claudia.
Oh. Yeah.
Flip it.
Dude, you know what?
No,
I totally get it. I call Grandia Grandia, and no one will ever tell me that it's something different. So I get like you learn something one way, and it's just hard to like think of it in any other way but that thing.
I think the other issue is that the only interactions I had with this game, I was still, during like COVID and stuff, I was playing it with my friends like digitally from college, and the only person who knew about the game previously was me. So if you didn't say it like on like a Lion Wing Talks or whatever, it's just my interpretation.
Yeah.
So erase.
So speaking of
Sorry, you can
interpretations,
call it.
That's how we got Chapberry.
Oh yes, can we talk about that for a second?
Do it.
Shout out to the Twitter poll I made yesterday. Fern and I wanted to cause some violence, okay? So we asked the community whether or not you think that the Chara Berry, the item that allows you to cure your hero's ailments and stun, printed on the original card, looks like Chara Berry or Chappa Berry with a P. Of course, I asked this on Twitter. I put it up for 24 hours, and guess what happened? They voted for 1 for Charaberry, 1 for Choppaberry, and 1 for both. Anyway,
results are inconclusive. I think that's where that lands.
when I shared the post like on Facebook, I said it's Choppaberry. I don't make the rules. Well, maybe I do now. But anyway. So that's fun. We'll come back to that eventually. So where were we going before I derailed us?
Yeah.
No, I think the Chappa
we're
versus
pretty much-
Charaberry thing is a cool little like bit of history that people may have missed or not realized that it was even like a point of contention amongst the community.
It seems like an inside joke or like an insider thing, but if you look at the original card, it's almost clear as day. And then you look really close, and then you look at the new version of the card, and just because it's blown up, you can clearly see it's an R.
Yeah.
It's funny though. It's real good. I love that that old community building stuff. Before we got the rules clarification on Lemugia, the amount of hours I poured into that challenge boss trying to get these like turtle comps to get through her infinite damage and healing. Good times, dude. Good times. Good thing you had Ramo on speed dial.
I only beat Lemugia EX once under that rule set, and it was with the broken comp that I usually run, and it barely did it.
I loved that Ramo. He was like super. I mean, he still is too, but gosh, he was quick with rules clarifications when we reached out to him. That was great.
I think if you go to the Lion Wing Publishing FAQ, I may be the originator of like 2 or 3 of those FAQ questions that you put up. I mean, I think it's more, I don't want to say it was my friend's fault, because the way that we are as gamers, we really want to see things clarified in the rules. So that's why I asked as many questions as I did, because we wanted to make sure we were playing right. That's all. But it's just funny. I think back to all the hours we spent playing like Betrayal at the House on the Hill, and the amount of rules clarifications that not even Board Game Geek could fix for us was monumental. So something that I still pull back to this day. Fern and I have done the best that we can to clarify rules on like new content going forwards. We still have an internal FAQ just in case for when somebody comes asking.
Oh yeah, we have an internal FAQ for interactions among characters that you haven't even been told about yet. So we thought very hard about the rules.
Oh yeah, you guys definitely dug deep on rules clarifications. Yeah, we were talking about before we were discussing the character booklet, and we were talking about the rankings and all of that, and talking about creating new lore entries for some of the new characters. And I shared this with you guys earlier in the week. I don't think it made the cut when it came to the countdown about, though the first part of this is kind of well known because I've talked about it before. When Lion Wing got the rights to Karate Wild Hunt Festival, Ramo didn't have a lot of the lore figured out. It was pretty early days for the Karate universe, and he just hadn't fleshed out a whole lot of the world. And certainly with Wild Hunt Festival, he hadn't fleshed out a lot of the characters. They had sort of basic backstories, but my idea for the game was just to give everyone more, in case there were people out there who are like me, who do want to read about like characters in board games, but there wasn't a whole lot to go off of. So as I've said before, like, Rama just kind of gave me carte blanche and said, like, okay, yeah, write whatever lore you want for these characters, and that'll be it. And I said, okay, cool, like, this will be fun. The interesting part about this story is, so I started writing those character entries close to launch of the Kickstarter, but sort of concurrently, or like precedingly, I had just written like 50 pages of lore that like 2 pages were ultimately the only ones that were used for Testament, because we included some lore in the characters for that game as well, because yet again those characters came to me without not a lot of backstory, and I asked the designer, like, I want to flesh out these characters anyway. So, but I was like, you know what, if I want to write these characters, I have to write the world, and then I'll put the characters in the world, and that's how I'm going to do it. That's the only way it makes sense to me to like write characters. World build, then character build. So I'd written like 50 pages on this board game just to write like 75 words per character in the rulebook. But somehow, because Testament is a much darker game tonally, and then when I was given just like the ability to write whatever lore I wanted to for that game, I didn't make it super dark, but like it was pretty dark, the stuff that I had written. I thought it made sense for the world. It wasn't Dark Souls dark, but certainly wasn't bright and cheery like Wild Hunt Festival. So anyway, so I finished writing that lore, and then I went basically right into writing the lore and the backstories for the characters. And and you can kind of see like my struggle with doing this. So when I transitioned over to writing the lore for Karate Wild Hunt Festival, I wrote Luca's lore first, and coincidentally enough, like, Luca's story I think is the darkest story, and I wasn't even aware of it at the time, other than like my first couple versions of his backstory were like, they were just too dark for Wild Hunt Festival. I wrote them, and then I read them back, and I was like, this doesn't even fit, I gotta lighten this up. Anyway, so we went through multiple revisions, and then after Luca was done, I moved into Kune, which Kune's story is also on the darker side. I finished up Kune's story, did my revisions, and made it lighter than what it originally was. And I was like, okay, listen, like, I can't keep writing these dark characters for this really, like, blue skies game. I gotta change this. So if you read the character log and you read in the order of Luca first, then Kune, and then Okla, who's the third that I wrote, the pendulum totally swings, whereas like Luca's is pretty dark, Kune's is pretty dark, and then Okla's is like real silly. So I wrote her because I was like, okay, I need comic relief somewhere in here. And hopefully if I write comic relief for this character, it'll get me into like a lighter state of mind when it comes to writing the rest of the characters. Fortunately, I kind of felt like the pendulum swung a little too far with Okla, so then every character after that felt a lot more like centered tonally, of like fitting in a lot better with the world. But it's just interesting that when you read that character log, you can kind of see how my brain was working and how it was adjusting to a totally different property sort of in real time. And I could have gone back and I could have like adjusted the lore for Luca and Okla and Kune to like fit more in line with the rest. And I was like, you know what? Nah, I kind of like this. I like that my journey is in these characters. So there's a fun little like factoid about behind the scenes work on Wild Hunt Festival. You never know what goes into writing lore for a board game.
Yeah. Well, and now we have.
And now
Oh, do you want to go ahead?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and now I've got the booklet out, and I'm gonna write it down. I'm gonna make sure I read them all in order.
Do it.
So and that's actually really interesting, is because now Ramo has a better interpretation of what he believes the lore to be of the game, and that's really something interesting because Jake and I came with these Rights of Nature characters and the Ari of Light and Shadow characters, and at first we were like, oh, Ari of Light and Shadow, it's not dark to say as a story, but it does get emotional sometimes, and it gets serious, which is not quite the like tongue in cheek that Wild and Festival tends to have. So we were like, okay, maybe Ramo's gonna say, I don't want this in my game. Um, he was actually completely okay with that for the most part, from what we've gotten in responses. The funny thing was that when we designed the silly character, he decided to make them much more serious. So, and I love the way she turned out. If you see on Jake's screen, you got Myra over there. Amazing character. She looks awesome. Plays awesome. I don't think her gameplay actually changed at all from the original design, because it was just
which
really
is good.
well knit. Yeah, it's really well knit. But we had designed her as this like silly small child with crazy potions that just makes whatever potion she wants, and they explode sometimes. And that is not how she is anymore. And Rama was just like, let's make her this the other thing instead.
I like that.
And he took a much
I like
serious
how
tone with it.
accessible Ramo is, but I also like that he has also realized that we find the lore to be important, which I think in turn has prompted him to take the world building and his own lore more seriously. And I'm not like giving us credit to say like, oh, we're the reason why like there's better lore right now, but like I do think he was like, wait a second, people do want to read about these characters in this world, and I should probably like come up with an official canon here that makes sense. And it's my game after all, and I should probably do that. So, yeah, I'd like to think that we played a small part in him reassessing the importance of the lore in a board game, in his board game. Because I do think now that he has a much better grasp on it, which just ultimately helps us, because then we know, like, we better understand what his expectations are. We also know that he's going to have answers for certain things. He still doesn't have all the answers. It's still work in progress and fleshing this stuff out, but he's got a lot more now than he did in the beginning. That's for certain.
Right. I think that also means like looking forwards at something like his new property, like is that on the same continent that Kradia is on, or that Wild Hunt Festival takes place in? Where does that fit in with the world? How do we go from this to that, and things along those lines, like in connecting those if we ever see that character come back or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because I wouldn't mind at some point.
It's been a really fun journey. And
Yeah, it has. I wouldn't mind at some point doing more with some of the other Kradia games. I think that new game looks interesting. And I like that Ramo is still like coming up with Kradia games, because ultimately that benefits the Wild Hunt Festival subseries, directly and indirectly. Yeah, and that new game looks really interesting. Rabbitopia. It's a good name. Weird name. Good name though.
Yeah, it looks interesting. I actually hope maybe one time he'll give us like a rundown on how it plays or something like that, because I unfortunately cannot read his social media posts.
Yes.
Okay. Well, was there anything else we wanted to make mention of? Stuff that we're going to do in the coming days? I know Fern and I were thinking about doing like a Beyond the Hunt, what was it, this Friday or sometime next week? Doing like a we play through the game and kind of hang out with chat and talk about how things are going and stuff like that. Was there anything other than that we wanted to lead off with?
Yeah, I think the Let's Play is a fantastic idea. I think people will like that, and we can feature that on the campaign page as well, and people will want to engage with that, which will be cool. I think for updates, I mentioned it in today's update, it's going to be sort of a mixture of different things in those updates. Sometimes it's going to be a character spotlight. We did those in the first campaign. We're bringing them back, and that'll look like a little bit of their lore, but also what role do they play in a party, what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses, how they're good, basically, and maybe how they're not great in some circumstances. And so just like detailing and bioing characters. So we'll do that. We'll have some updates that go into each of the releases specifically. Some will be sort of like a bird's eye view of those releases. Others will get into the weeds with some of the new mechanics and tweaks to the gameplay and the dungeon mode specifically, and that kind of thing. So we'll pull back the curtain further on what these games exactly entail. Probably do some boss spotlights. We'll talk about some shoulder content in there. We'll dig into the lore a little bit, that kind of thing. So just trying to, the tough part with a Kickstarter is like, how do you keep people engaged? Now, the truth is most people like pledge to a Kickstarter and then they never look at it again, or they might check it out one time. But truthfully, if someone has already made up their mind that they're going to pledge to something, they're going to pledge their money, and then they're really not going to engage with that Kickstarter again until it's time to like fill out like an address survey. So it's always this puzzle to solve of like, okay, like how do we produce content that's interesting for the people who do want to engage with it? How do we produce content in a way that it might bring back some of those people who just kind of like do a fire and forget when it comes to their pledge? And how do you make the updates meaningful? For the few people who do engage with the updates, like what do they want? So if the question then to the community is, what do you want? Because I've given you an outline of some of the stuff that we've come up with, but if there are certain things that people want to see in the updates, I definitely want to hear about it. You can do that in the Discord. You can do it in the comment section of the campaign page, whatever. But that's always helpful because you never really know what an audience wants. I've been doing Kickstarters since 2018, and like with Lion Wing, I even know my Lion Wing audience, and I still don't know exactly what they want each Kickstarter because it kind of changes. So it's just easier to not have to guess all the time and just have people say like, hey, I wish you'd talk about this. Cool. So if you want to learn about something specific, don't be shy about that. Let us know, and we will dedicate some time to that in one of the updates. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I don't have anything else on my docket. Haven't seen any other questions come through, so think that about wraps it up for us.
Indeed. Thanks everyone for tuning in, or if you're watching this on playback, thanks for checking us out that way too. And of course, anyone who's watching this, who's pledged to the campaign, who's following the campaign, who's excited about the campaign and the games, thanks so much for your support, for your enthusiasm. It's been an awesome first 8 hours on Kickstarter. Really excited about where this is going to go with the campaign. And there are lots of things that you could be spending your money on now more than ever. And there are lots of things that you are not going to spend your money on for a multitude of reasons. You've chosen to spend your hard-earned money on this product. And like, no amount of words can really express gratitude that people like ourselves have, the creators behind this, like recognizing you could use that money for anything other than this, but you chose to use it for this. And like, thank you isn't enough to express how grateful we are for that, and like your trust in us to deliver what we're saying we can deliver. Just thank you for showing up, because like the more that people show up, momentum is a real thing in the Kickstarter world. And so like, you want to have good momentum your first 2 days, and you guys have definitely given us momentum. So thank you so much.
Yeah, nothing to add. Couldn't have said it better myself. Thank you guys so much. Really, from the bottom of my heart, it has been an insane day. Cannot wait to just continuously bring you guys content, and you guys are making a dream come true right now, for real. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Till next time.
All right. Good night, everybody.